Does the word quasi-homoerotic mean anything to you? Because if it does, we have a movie right here. For lack of better words, this movie filletes itself. That doesn't mean it's a bad movie. I'm just saying it fillets itself whilst trying to be sophisticatedly sexy and edgy. Challengers is definitely an entertaining film, but there's just a lot of things I couldn't get on board with. And that's fine because I'm probably not the audience for this film. It's a dramatic chick flick, but a lot of emphasis on dramatic because it's not a romantic comedy. It does take itself quite seriously. Chicks love the idea of men fighting over them, and in a nutshell, that's what this movie is about, with some slight homosexual undertones sprinkled right over it. Must be nice. The queer undertones of this movie is on brand for Luca Guadagnino, who was the director of this film. He also directed Call Me By Your Name and literally has a movie coming out later on this year called Queer with Daniel Craig as lead. So most of his films at some point will have men passionately make out, so you have something to look forward to, if that's the way you swing. In my unsolicited opinion, this movie should be called Simps, or my personal favorite, What? Why? Challengers is a 2024 American sports film directed by Luca Guadagnino and written by Justin Kuretskis. The film stars Zendaya, Josh O'Connor, and Mike Feist. Zendaya also serves as a producer on this film. And with all that said, here is the plot followed by the pros and cons. Tashi Duncan, a former tennis prodigy turned coach, is married to a champion on a losing streak. Her strategy for her husband's redemption takes a surprising turn when he must face off his former best friend, who also happens to be Tashi's former boyfriend. The plot really should be two boys fall in love with the same girl and decide to build their entire life around her. That is an oversimplification, but it is pretty accurate. And now for the pros and cons, starting with cons. Con number 1. It has this strange timeline jump-in style of storytelling that is often quite jarring. It's actually kind of annoying, but it's not a deal breaker. It's like a story being told by a high school girl with ADHD. Do with that information as you please. Con number 2. The tennis court had this camera angle that was genius and also annoying at the same time. It had me flinching every time the tennis ball flies by the camera. It was placed right in the middle of the court, so the ball feels like it's coming right at your eyeballs. It was weird, kind of genius, but somehow a con. Con number 3. Now on the topic of the whole camera placement, this movie had a lot of interesting camera angles and techniques, but I don't think it actually added more to the storytelling as much as the director thought it would have. But then again, I still say kudos for experimenting with camera angles. But it's too try-hardy. Is that a word? It's probably not a word. No, it's a word. It has to be. Con number 4. The total abuse of slow motion. Usually slow motion is used to emphasize a point or a moment, and when you use it all the time, it loses all meaning. Even Zack Snyder would have said, dude, come on, stop with the slow motion. Con number 5. Speaking of unnecessary, the score or music was very overused. I couldn't tell when there was supposed to be something that was tense or not tense because the tonality of the score suggests that it was going to be a tense moment, only to have almost no payoff at the end, which is weird. Like maybe 3 or 2 of the times the scores were played, it made sense, but the remainder was just, why are you doing this? What's up with you, Guadagnino? Con number 6. This movie doesn't actually know what it's trying to be for the most part. It's not a coming-of-age movie. It's not softcore porn. It's not a queer story. Frankly, I don't know what it was trying to be, but it did not nail any of those things as well as it could have. And that's all for cons. Now let's move over to pros. Pro number 1. Zendaya is pretty hot. I never considered that. Up until this film. I've never looked at her in that. She's Good on you. Good on you, Zendaya. Pro number 2. Now, she's more than just a pretty face. She also knows how to be a very subtle, domineering character. Her performance in this film was undeniable. In her preparation for her role, Zendaya spent about 3 months training with pro tennis player turned coach Brad Gilbert. Pro number 3. It's probably that whole Zendaya being hot thing again. Yeah. You gotta see this stuff. Look, I don't have a lot of pros for this movie, but I still think it's an entertaining film. It's just that it sucks its own dick so much. Just, wow. Yes, self-serving. That's the right word I was looking for. I could have opened with that actually. I could have said, Challenger served up a deuce with no love. I could have taken advantage of that. I'll see myself out. I'm gonna go ahead and rate this movie a 5 out of 10 because it's not particularly horrible, but it's trying way too hard to be cool and sexy, and that's kind of annoying. This movie is heavily marketed towards women, and I had no business being there. However, I was there for the whole Zendaya reasons, but I ended up having a gay old time. And for that, I can only really recommend this movie to a handful of people, mostly women, and anyone who is curious about stuff and or already enjoys a fair amount of stuff. And that, folks, is my 2 cents. For a sexy, edgier film, consider watching this video.